Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I got some mixed feelings about making this video, but it was a decision that I made a few months ago that might be shocking to say, but you're a Calgary sports fan. Why would you make this kind of decision? Well, I'll give you various reasons that led to my decision, but I'm going to talk about that after 5 seasons, I actually decided to cancel my Calgary Roughnecks season tickets. You're not going to see me in the Rough House as much in the future. I still plan to go to Roughneck games in the future, just not be able to commit to a full season. And you'd be forgiven if you're like, well, did you have Roughneck season tickets last season? Because I didn't see you in the Rough House. Well, yeah, because believe it or not, I only was able to make it to one game this past season. Just one. That's why there hasn't been as many Roughneck moments captured with the introductions or any preseason, or not preseason, halftime entertainment, because I only made it to the home opener. And give you my various reasons. Before I did that, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. But I am still, obviously it would take a lot more for me to give up and cancel my Calgary Stampeders season tickets, as this season, this is my 27th season of having season tickets with the Stampeders, with a combination of being with my father's account and my own account. I was fully a season ticket holder with the Stampeders since 1997, and kind of started off with the Roughnecks. I went to a bunch of games a couple seasons prior, like I did with the Stampeders, and was able to decide be cheaper to get season tickets, or more economical. And I would say my general rule of thumb is you don't have to go to all the games, but I'm going to say if you're able to go to, let's say, 2/3 of the games, it probably costs just as much for you to have season tickets than it would be to buy an individual ticket throughout the season, depending on where you are. Well, even if you like to be relatively in the same area, spend it maybe in the same range. Well, obviously with benefits of having a season ticket is not only you get tickets for all the games, but you get a little bit of a discount compared to if you bought that single seat for every game of the season. Plus you get maybe extra discounts, like a discount card for at the store, a food coupon, which I'll give up some of that, not having Roughneck season tickets. But I was only able to go to one game this past season, and in previous seasons I still missed 3 or 4 games for various reasons, but I was still over that 2/3 mark, thinking, well, I'd still get my money's worth. But this season kind of was my tipping point. Before the 2018-19 season, that was my first season that I got Roughnecks tickets, and that happened to be the year that we won the championship over the Buffalo Bandits. Overtime, I'm definitely glad I was at that moment, and I actually was at the game, but it was a single game in 2009, but I was up in the 200 level at the Saddledome off to the side that I watched the Roughnecks won the championship live in 2009, but it was definitely a much better experience being in the lower bowl in 2019 with over 17,000 fans. And I'm going to dare say, when Reese Dutch scored that goal to win the championship for the Roughnecks, I don't know, I was going to say that was as loud as the dome was gotten at that time, since Flames playoff runs, see 2004 and 2015, but a lot has changed since then. Before COVID wrecked everything, I felt the game day experience had gradually declined I mean, COVID still wrecked everything in terms of it going out and all that, and then plus, everything getting more expensive. But I found that over time, once the Roughnecks got back, I mean, I think in the 2019 season, I only missed one game, and that was because I had a flu that I was still fighting, and it was a game time decision to make the game, and then I laid on the couch. When I woke up, it was 6:50. I was like, no, I guess I'm not going to make it to the game. And then 2020, I was able to make every game until COVID wrecked everything, and then there was no season until 2022, and that's where things kind of started falling off the rails for me as a season ticket holder with the Calgary Roughnecks, where I still happily was go to the game. It's a unique experience. If you've never been to a lacrosse game, NHL game, where it's fast paced, the game's always going. There's many goals, and shout out to the most recent commenter who I made that video on how to celebrate the Calgary Roughnecks goal with clutch, electric worry, that vamos, but bang, bang, bang. I mean, that's all part of the experience, and you could pick that up very quickly with the Rough House. But I know in that 2022 season, that was when COVID was still in and out, where there were a bunch of games that got postponed and they were scheduled, and then when they were scheduled, I wasn't able to make it to those games, but I still was able to make it to over 66% of the games. And then in 2023, I kind of had the same thing, but I found what it's happened more. And I know you got the Saddledome. They say the Saddledome is like one of the busiest venues in North America. That they say only the Staples Center in Los Angeles, or I guess now it's called the Crypto.com Arena. Sorry. With the Kings, Lakers, Clippers, Lakers, Kings, all those teams playing. And then, of course, Los Angeles and Hollywood, they get 1 billion concerts in that. And then Madison Square Garden in New York, which that's the one arena that that's the top of my list. That I might have to make a list of arenas that I want to catch a hockey game in. Madison Square Garden's number one, which, it's New York City, iconic building. That they say the Saddledome is as busy as other arenas, and then, the Flames are their principal owners, which they own the Hitmen, Wranglers, and Roughnecks. So you got all of them trying to jockeying for dates. And then despite, we do need a new arena, and there is one on the way. I haven't been able to make any pictures or vlogging on the go. I might try to do some of that before the Stampede or at the Stampede if I manage to go. But we still get concerts and acts at the Saddledome. So you get a busy arena, but one thing that I found that's been an issue the last couple of years is the schedule is way too damn inconsistent. It's hard to get into a rhythm and go to games. It might work for a single ticket holder to get a bunch of games in a short time, but this past season, and then I was much busier at work. Wintertime's also cold and flu season, so I was dealing with that. But I was only able to go to the home opener, and it happened to be during winter break when I was off work and all that. But the home opener wasn't until 3 weeks after the season started for the Roughnecks, and then they have an odd number of teams in the NLL, 15 to be precise at this point. So you're going to have a couple teams that are going to be the odd team out for bye weeks, kind of like with the CFL right now, where you have a 9-team league. You can only have 4 games a week at maximum. 8 teams play, well, one has a bye. But it felt like the Roughnecks, they just got the weird part of the schedule where, you got to factor in a busy building, but you still, it seems like you get a bunch of Flames games, a bunch of Hitman games, bunch of regular games, but then there seems like there's, when you look at the Saddledome calendar too, there's still gaps that you can make the games more consistent. But we had to wait 3 weeks for the first Roughnecks game when the NLL season began. And then the next home game wasn't until 5 weeks later, the first weekend of February, where then you had a game Friday night and Saturday night. I mean, that seems to be a little much, especially when I was stupidly busy at work and sick. And then I've noticed, now that I'm 42, I don't seem to bounce back from colds as quickly as I used to. And always got to throw it again. Don't have the energy of a border collie anymore. And the fact that we still have a, conscious crowd, and more conscious because of COVID, where maybe if this was 10 years ago, I still would have toughed it out and went to the game sick. I mean, you're like, well, why do you still go to work sick? Well, it's always the classic reasons of having too much to do, can't afford it, and feeling pressure to still come in. Well, going to the game is not as important as going to work, but when you're working sick and you're busy while being sick, it makes you extra exhausted. So I had to miss those games, and then it just lingered. Because February, I mean, you get 9 home games per season, factoring in playoffs. So you had 1 home game in December, it wasn't until the end of December, and then you didn't have any games till February, and then you had 4 home games in 2 weeks. So that gives you an inconsistent schedule. And then even January, I was busy, and then we had that cold snap. And the other thing that kind of has changed has been walking from the train station to the Saddledome. I mean, yes, price to pay for losing the corral and expanding the BMO Center, but I missed that plus 15. That's helped, like it was quicker to walk to the Dome from the Victoria Park Stampede station. So there was always construction that played a role in, walking to the front of the Dome. I'm thinking it's going to eventually get better now that the BMO Center is open. But all that aside, it was just the inconsistent schedule, and then after that bunch of games in February, then it was another month before we had 2 home games, and it was in back-to-back weekends, and I still was feeling sick and tired, as in literally sick and tired. I know it's a expression in figure speech when you're fed up, but I was actually sick and tired, so I missed those couple games, and that's when I eventually had to make a decision. And I wasn't able to go to those games in April because I felt like I just needed that time off, and I just feel like I'm not too sure if I'm at that age. It seems easier for me to stay out late to go to a football game, but then the football game in general, other than maybe a Friday or Thursday night games, the games start at 7, and then the weekend games start at 5, or we have afternoon games, but all Roughneck games that I remember, that every time we've had games at the Saddledome, they all start at 7 o'clock, which, sometimes that could be a little late. I mean, the game's quick and you're done, in a couple, 2.5 hours, and depending if you want to speed track it and use an Uber and be home by 10, which I've done both, where if I Uber after the game, I'm home by 10 with a 7 o'clock ball drop, or if I take transit, then it's not until 11. My rule of thumb is if you're at the Saddledome and the game doesn't start till 8, you're definitely not going to be home until midnight, but just, the schedule, your weekends, and you're giving up time on your weekends. I mean, it's my long word, it was the inconsistent schedule. And then the rep that I was always in contact with, Connor Lacey, shout out to you. It's been great to put up with me and retrieve my, gift card a few times that I could use that in McMahon, so thanks for that. But it's the fact that he did also say many fans weren't happy with the schedule, so I'm going to say it's the schedule. And then me over the years, I mean, if being 2024 is different than I was in 2018 and 2019 and before COVID, I mean, life seems a little more complicated, and I just can't have that schedule. The Stampeders schedule was that inconsistent. It would be harder for me to get into a rhythm and go to games. I mean, for Stampeder games, on average, you get a game every couple weeks. You might have a game, 3 weeks or a month later, depending on if the team had 2 weeks on the road with a bye, or then you get 2 games like on a Friday or Saturday, and the start times are earlier. So the schedule is very, very inconsistent, and my personal schedule just made it tougher for me to go to games, commit to a full season. And when you only were able to go to 1 game for the whole season, that's definitely a lot of money. And then being the fact that I'm single, I only have 1 ticket, because I did try one time before I would suggest, well, why don't you give it to charity? I actually did that one time. There was one Roughneck game that I knew that I wasn't able to go to, so I contacted the charity. You have the option to digitally send your ticket to charity, and I know one charity is called Kids Up Front, that if you're unable to go to the game, you could donate your ticket, and and then give it to kids who otherwise wouldn't get to go to the game. So I was thinking, well, hopefully to be able to be a kid that could go to the game, sit in the lower bowl in the club section at the Zone, pretending you're rich, because you wouldn't be able to afford that same seat at a Flames game on a Tuesday night in January, never mind playoffs, if we ever go back there. But it was like 10 minutes later, the charity came back to me and said, thanks for showing your interest, but considering it's a single ticket, we need a cohort, so we're kindly giving your ticket back to you. So I can't really, and it's harder to sell a single ticket without knowing a cohort that could buy it next to my ticket. So essentially I got to eat the cost for the ticket. So I definitely spent more money. If every game was dressed like an empty seat party, well, I definitely fulfilled that after the home opener this past year. And then, getting back to, I've had season tickets for the Stampeders for 27 seasons, and hopefully counting, that with this economy where everything keeps getting more expensive, stuff that you need at the drugstore or the grocery store, or try to go on vacation, and a large popcorn and Diet Coke seems to cost you $15 almost, and beer for that price. Well, with everything getting more expensive, yet your paychecks don't go up at all, or not fast enough to keep up with rising costs, and you gotta manage a budget and live on your own, you have to make some decisions. And considering I wasn't able to go 2 games, and the fact that I've only had 5 seasons with Roughneck games versus 27 with the Stampeders, and I felt it's still nice to go to the game, but I felt the game day experience just gradually decline. But there's just nothing I can really put my finger on it. I think it's just different changes in staff and how they promote it, or pump up the fans, or just what you get. And then everything just seems to get more expensive, but you don't get more money, because that's the way the economy seems to work, that I had to cancel my tickets. How I pay for my tickets is I do the monthly installment plan, and I did it for the Stampeders, and sometimes it gets colorful depending on, especially when money's a little tighter. But if I were to commit to next season, I would have started paying for my Roughnecks tickets now in June and made 10 payments to March. And then if there was any playoff games, they structure it now that the first playoff game is actually included. But if there's any subsequent playoff games, like what happened in 2023, where we got to the conference final, then you pay as you go in. And apparently that's the same with the Calgary Flames. That I thought it would be if you had season tickets for the Flames, that theoretically you would have tickets for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, paying it all. But I realized that doesn't quite work that way, because you always hear these part packs, which I'll touch on what I suggest the Roughnecks should do, is that you pay for your season ticket, then the playoffs come separately, and then you have options of pay as you play, pay up front, or pay it all. So that's how it works. So yeah, I guess if you bought tickets for the Calgary Flames, you'd have to pay your playoff tickets separately, which I guess that explains how tickets get available. for certain games. But, I still plan to still go to Roughneck games. I'm not completely bad at just saying being a season ticket holder obviously doesn't work with my time and budget, and those are the two big things, especially over the winter. But I still plan to at least go to the home opener, and then with my Stampeders season tickets, I usually get a complimentary Roughnecks game with it. So if I at least go to those two games, I would have taken in more Roughneck games next season than I did this past season, and I was a season ticket holder this past season, just on paper, because I just didn't go, and just something that just happened. But I definitely would suggest, obviously, a more consistent schedule, but you don't see the schedule come out till September. I know that when we get into July, usually that's when the NHL releases their schedule, so then you get the Calgary Flames will have their schedule, and then you got the Hitmen, and then the Wranglers, and even in the Hitmen and Wranglers, they get some odd start times, like the game doesn't start till, or it starts like 11 o'clock on a Friday morning when it comes to Wranglers. I'm like, well, then essentially you either have to play a little hooky from work, Creed reference from The Office, and hope the work bus isn't picking you up, or you got to take the day off from work. I do get off earlier on Friday, but in order for me to make it to the Dome for 11 o'clock puck drop, I'd have to either play hooky or call in sick or just take the day off. And then the Hitmen usually have like a Wednesday afternoon game, but I figured out that's like that Stop Bullying game in late February where you get a bunch of school kids and they fill up the Dome all wearing pink for that. So at least they put some use in that and have a full building, but the Wranglers don't have that. So it's just inconsistent schedule. But the one thing the Stampeders did this season that they advertised a lot more is game backs. I think the Roughnecks should consider game backs, where you get to pick to go with the 3 or 5 games, like the Stampeders. There's always a bunch of game packs if you get Flames insider emails, where potentially you get like to pick a couple games, or they always have like theme 6-packs where, maybe they'll say, I know a couple years ago when we had all these former Flames come back to town, they themed the games of, former Flames back, where you got to go to the game when, Sean Monahan, Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau come back to town, or have like a Canadian pack, or, Eastern Conference pack, and then maybe you throw in an extra item. I know I missed out one time a couple years ago for the Flames that there was a couple of Eastern Conference games I wanted to go to, and I just missed out that there was 2 Eastern Conference games. I still wound up going, but I had to pay for it separately. That if I was able to buy it on time, I would have gotten like a free toque. So I'd suggest the Roughnecks do something like that. Offer game packs, because I have noticed, but I guess it seems to be in general, that attendance has dropped. Well, it's dropped a lot more significantly with the Stampeders over the years, but you could say, the economy, maybe you could say our stadium is what it is, but I think a lot of it's just the economy. And for the case of the Stampeders, you can't necessarily blame it on team performance, because we've still been competitive. Roughnecks, they've declined last years, but the season before we got to the conference championship, and if you would have won that game in the fourth quarter against Colorado, we would have made it to the finals against the Buffalo Bandits. At least had one more game for the finals. But I just feel that people just don't have, when it's getting harder to afford things like at the drugstore, the grocery store, non-discretionary things like going to the game, going out gets cut, and I had to make that decision. But I just say for the Roughnecks, I just say try to get a more consistent schedule, and then come up with backs. And then I guess another thing is a little nitpick. Since WestJet sponsored the game field, because it's called WestJet Field at the Scotiabank Saddledome, I didn't quite like the rebrand for the Roughnecks, where they ditched the mountain in their logo and got rid of the red. So I'd say bring back those red jerseys. I want to see those red jerseys back for the Roughnecks. that's not going to, if they announce tomorrow, well, those red jerseys are coming back, I'm not going to drop everything and get season tickets, because my decision was already made with my schedule, my budget, where things are at right now. I had to make that decision, but I mean, unlike many others, I've had to make those kind of decisions. I'm sure you can relate. But have you had to make some decision like that? Have you had Roughneck season tickets? Have you been to Roughneck games? Have you felt the game day experience still okay, but it seems like it's declined over the years? Or is it just I'm middle-aged now and I'm starting to become the old farts at the game when people are, half your age? Or now most of the demographics, I don't know. It's just midlife crisis. But that's all I can say to close out, that I did decide to cancel my Roughneck season tickets, but I still plan to still go to games. I'm just back to just being a single ticket holder again. So anyway, so I say, if you want to close out, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below. So I'm going to say, go Nest go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.